Have you ever been in a meeting that was disorganized, a time waster, and completely useless? Oh, just yesterday, you say? Just kidding. Maybe. We've all been in those meetings, unfortunately. One of your responsibilities as a Scrum Master is to run effective and efficient meetings. And your secret ingredient to doing that is building your facilitation skills. Why? Because facilitation skills are specific tools in your Scrum Master toolbox that help you make meetings not only effective for people, but often very enjoyable. Imagine! So the purpose of this sprint is to give you 8 core facilitation skills: how to open the meeting, clarify objectives, clarify your role as facilitator, how to run a process, create working agreements, take the group through the body of the meeting, recap the outcomes, and confirm the agreements and next steps. Whew, that was a mouthful, and I lost count. But by the end of this sprint, you're going to understand what these skills are, and more importantly, you'll know how to apply them in your Scrum events, like in sprint planning or the daily stand-up, the retrospective, the review, even backlog refinement. So let's start with the opening. That's your first few words. Whether you're facilitating sprint planning, the daily stand-up, or any other meeting, use the opening to set the tone of that particular meeting. Also, focus on developing rapport with people right from the beginning. When you do a good opening, that gets people's attention and also develops your credibility with the group, whether it's your team or your stakeholders. Your next job, number 2, now I'm keeping count, is to clarify objectives. For example, tell them, the objective of our meeting today is to plan our sprint. Or, the objective of our meeting today is to do the retrospective, to figure out what we should keep doing, stop doing, and start doing. I used to just say those objectives verbally, but I quickly discovered that people can easily get off track, especially if they get passionate about the topic. So what I do now is I put the objectives up somewhere visually, like on a Zoom whiteboard or just my screen in Word, that I might be sharing with the group. Anytime they get off track, I change screens to show the objectives, and I ask them, is what we're talking about right now furthering our objectives? Probably not, but I let them decide. The next thing for you to do is to clarify your role as the facilitator. That helps everybody have a realistic expectation of you. For example, if you're facilitating backlog refinement, say something like, I'm not here as a subject matter expert on the stories. That's what we have our product owner for. Instead, what I'm here for is to make sure we all work together effectively. That means if we wander, I'll invite you to get back on track. Or if one person is talking a whole lot, I might invite that person to listen for a bit and invite the quieter people to speak up. When you clarify your role at the beginning like that, it makes it easier for you to intervene when you need to in order to get them back on track or readjust. Your next step, this might be 3, not sure, losing count again, but your next step is to give the group an overview of the process that you're going to follow during the meeting. This is much simpler than it sounds. You're just going to list the steps that you'll all follow throughout the course of the meeting, so they know what to expect. So for a retro, for example, just say something like, first, we're going to list the things we thought worked well in the past sprint and that we should keep doing. Then we're going to list the things that didn't work well that we want to stop doing. Third, we're going to list things we'd like to start doing that would be really great. After that, we're going to group any similar items together. It's called affinity grouping. And finally, everybody's going to get 3 votes to vote for their favorite retrospective items. Then we'll talk about the top 2 or 3. Then we'll take our number 1 retro item and make it a 0-point story in our next sprint. Your next job as a facilitator is to help the group develop a working agreement for the meeting to create a positive environment. This is very similar to an Agile team social contract, only it's just for that meeting. I like to ask people, so how do you want the environment to feel in this meeting? For example, fun or serious, fast or slow? Then I type in whatever they say on the shared screen so they can see it. So some examples of working agreements my groups have created in the past are things like, we all agree to participate fully, or all opinions are valued and must be honored. Next, comes the body of the session. You're going to guide the group through the steps you just mentioned towards the objective that you've defined. This is where most of the meeting time gets spent. Your job is to keep them on track to the objective and help them follow the steps that you outlined. In the last few minutes of the meeting, it's your job to summarize the outcomes to make sure there's a shared understanding. Give a very brief recap, including commitments that were made. It sounds something like, so what we covered today was topic X, Y, and Z. Finally, you're going to do a confirmation of agreements and next steps. So summarize what people agreed on and what they agreed to do. And then ask and document next steps. I like to create a simple Kanban visual on a shared screen that shows the what, the who, and the by when. Do make sure the group has an answer to the question of where do we go from here? Now it's your turn. Note down each of these steps and use them as a guide in your next meeting. If you're in the mentoring cohort program, be prepared to bring your observations on how it went for us to discuss together. So the purpose of this sprint was to give you the 8 core facilitation skills: how to open the meeting, clarify objectives, clarify your role as facilitator, run a process, create working agreements, take the group through the body of the meeting, recap the outcomes, and confirm the agreements and next steps. Yeah, that was 8. By now, you should understand what these skills are, but more importantly, you have a good sense of how to apply them in your Scrum events and other meetings. You can do this, Scrum Masters.